How do the Japanese sleep through nights of 90 degrees with 80% humidity, no air conditioning, exactly the way they've done it for centuries? You've tried everything. The fan blowing straight at your face all night, sleeping with no covers, a cold shower right before bed, and you still wake up drenched at 3 in the morning. The reason is simple. You're fighting the wrong thing. Because the heat that keeps you awake at night is almost never the air in the room itself. It's radiant heat, the heat your mattress, your pillow, and the walls of your room have been soaking up all day long and slowly releasing back at you at night, right when you're trying to sleep. And on top of that, humidity, the sweat that can't evaporate because it's trapped against your skin. The Japanese don't try to cool the air because they know that without a machine, that's a losing battle. They go straight after those two things, stored heat and the moisture stuck to your body. Fix those two, and the number on the thermometer stops mattering. That's the entire system, and now we're going to take it apart piece by piece. Let's start with the quietest enemy, the one almost nobody thinks about, your own bed. Lie down on a polyester sheet on a hot night and that fabric repels water. It's hydrophobic, meaning its fibers are made from a kind of plastic that doesn't absorb liquid at all. So the sweat your body produces has absolutely nowhere to go. The fabric won't soak it up, and it can't evaporate because it's pressed flat between your skin and the sheet. So it just sits there, sealed in, forming a thin, sticky, humid film that makes you feel far hotter than the room actually is. And this part matters. Your body cools itself mainly by sweating, but sweat only cools you at the moment it evaporates. If it can't evaporate, it doesn't just fail to cool you, it becomes an insulating layer that traps heat against your body. That clammy, miserable feeling at 2 in the morning, with your back soaked against the mattress, isn't the heat of the air. It's your own cooling system jammed shut by a material that won't let it work. The Japanese answer to this has been the same for centuries. Natural fibers, always. Tatami, the traditional flooring woven from a grass called a gusa, has a property that physics calls hygroscopy. It's a long word for a very simple idea. Plant fibers are porous inside, like tiny sponges, so they absorb moisture from both the air and your skin, hold it inside the fiber, and slowly release it later when the air dries out or cools down. Synthetic fibers do the exact opposite. They have no pores, so they reject the moisture and leave it pooled on the surface against your skin. Now, you don't need to rip up your floor and lay down tatami. The principle applies to everything your body touches at night. Swap your polyester or polyblend sheets for real cotton, or better yet, linen. Linen is the star here because its fibers are hollow inside, like tiny tubes, and that does two things at once. It wicks heat away from your body and pulls moisture away far faster than almost any other fabric. That's why a linen sheet feels cool to the touch even after hours in a warm room, while a synthetic one feels warm and stuffy. It's not in your head, it's the fiber doing its job. If your sheets are the problem, this next one is the fix most people never try. In summer, a lot of Japanese households drop the regular sheets entirely and sleep on a mat laid over the futon or mattress. There are two main kinds: the goza, woven from the same agusa grass as tatami, and a version made from thin strips of bamboo bound together. And here's the detail almost nobody knows, the one that explains why they work. Bamboo has what physicists call very high thermal effusivity. It sounds technical, but the idea is dead simple. Thermal effusivity measures how quickly a material pulls heat out of whatever touches it. Bamboo does it fast, so the instant your body rests on the mat, it starts drawing the heat out of your skin and spreading it away, instead of reflecting it back at you. It's the exact same reason a stone or metal countertop feels cold to the touch, even when it's at room temperature. It isn't actually colder, it just conducts heat away from your hand very quickly. Now compare that to a memory foam mattress, the kind everyone's obsessed with. In summer, it does literally the worst possible thing. It molds around your body, wraps you up on every side, and that same foam that hugs your shape is an insulator that traps your body heat and hands it right back to you, so you end up sleeping inside your own oven. The bamboo mat does the exact opposite. It creates a firm, cool surface that carries heat away from you. It's the difference between lying on cool stone in the shade and lying on a cushion that's been sitting in the sun all afternoon. And one of these mats costs a fraction of what it takes to replace a whole mattress. If you're finding this useful, go ahead and hit subscribe. There's a lot more coming this summer. Let's keep going. Now, the pillow, because it's a spot where you build up a huge amount of heat without even realizing it. Your head is one of the areas where your body releases the most heat at night, and yet you rest it for hours on a foam pillow that acts like an actual heat sponge, sitting right under the part you most need to keep cool in order to sleep. Foam doesn't breathe. It absorbs the heat from your head, holds onto it, and within minutes you've got that hot side that forces you to keep flipping the pillow over and over, chasing a cool side that no longer exists. In Japan, the solution to this has existed for centuries: the Sobagara Makura, the pillow filled with buckwheat hulls. The hulls are small, hard, and irregular, so when they pile together they leave thousands of little air gaps between them. That lets air circulate inside the pillow itself instead of sitting stagnant, dispersing the heat from your head instead of storing it the way a solid block of foam does. If you can't get one of these pillows, don't worry, because the principle stays the same. Any filling that lets air move through it beats sealed foam, and even the simple act of switching your pillowcase to thin, breathable cotton makes a difference. And here's a trick a lot of people swear by that genuinely works. Put your pillowcase inside a plastic bag and leave it in the freezer for a while before bed. It won't stay cool all night, obviously, but it gives you those first 15 or 20 minutes of coolness, which are exactly the ones you need to fall asleep. And falling asleep, when it's hot, is usually the hardest part of the whole night. But notice something. Everything we've covered so far happens inside your bed. What about the heat coming from outside? The heat, the street, the pavement, and the very walls of your house have been storing through every hour of sunlight, and that keeps radiating slowly into your bedroom after dark. Because you can have the finest linen sheet in the world, but if the wall next to your bed is warm like a radiator on low, you're not going to get far. And here's where one of the oldest, cleverest Japanese practices comes in, and it costs absolutely nothing: Uchimizu. It simply means throwing or sprinkling water over the ground, the terrace, the patio, or the sidewalk at dusk, once the sun is no longer beating down directly. Why does it work? Pure physics, and it's fascinating. For water to go from liquid to vapor, it needs energy, and it doesn't get that energy from nowhere. It steals it in the form of heat from the hot ground and the air around it. So every drop that evaporates is literally carrying heat away from the environment with it. In Japanese cities, people step outside to do Uchimizu in front of their homes as the evening cools, almost like a ritual passed down through generations. And there are real measurements taken in Japan showing this practice can drop the air temperature near the ground by around 2 degrees Celsius for a good while. That's roughly 3 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not magic, and it won't air condition the whole street. But a few degrees off the air that's about to come through your bedroom window is something your body appreciates all night long. Do it on your terrace or on the patch of ground under your window about half an hour before bed. And there's an even more direct way to use that same physics, this time indoors. Take an old sheet or a large towel, soak it in cold water, wring it out well so it's damp but not dripping, and hang it in front of an open window where a bit of breeze comes through. The outside air, as it enters, is forced to pass through that damp fabric, and to do that it has to give up some of its heat to evaporate the water. The result is that the air arrives in your room already cooled. It's nothing more than a homemade evaporative air conditioner that costs you zero, working on the exact same principle as the evaporative coolers millions of people use in hot regions. One important thing so you don't end up disappointed: the drier the outside air, the better it works, because dry air has a huge capacity to soak up moisture. If you live somewhere with extreme humidity, the effect is smaller. If your climate is hot but dry, you'll feel a big difference. Quick one before the most important part. If you know someone who's been complaining all summer that they can't sleep in the heat, send them this. It'll change their nights. Okay, let's get to it. Because all of this leads to the most important technique of all, the one that ties everything else together and makes it work: cross-ventilation at night. And this is where almost everyone gets it completely backwards. During the day, with the heat pressing in from outside, you have to do the exact opposite of what your instinct tells you. Close up. Close the windows, lower the blinds, and above all, block the sun from the outside before it even reaches the glass. And here's the point almost nobody truly understands. Once sunlight passes through your window glass and enters the room, it turns into heat, and that heat is now inside, bouncing off your floor, your walls, and your furniture. There's no undoing it. That's why the Japanese hang the Sudare, those thin blinds made of bamboo or reed slats, on the outside of the window, not the inside. They block the sun before it hits the glass. The U.S. Department of Energy has put hard numbers on this. An exterior shade on a west-facing window, the one that takes the worst afternoon sun, can block up to 77% of the heat. An interior blind or curtain, on the other hand, only stops around 45%, precisely because by the time you draw it, the sun has already passed through the glass and the heat is already in the room. Shade on the outside during the day. That's the first step, and it's what keeps your room from turning into an oven before the sun even goes down. And then, at night, once the outside temperature finally drops below the temperature inside, that's when you open up. But pay attention. You don't just crack one window and call it done, because that barely moves the air. What you do is open 2 windows on opposite sides of the house or the room to create a cross draft. A real corridor of air that pushes all that hot, stagnant air you've been putting up with out one side and drags the cool night air in the other. And if you really want to speed it up, put a fan in the highest or farthest window, but pointing outward, pushing the room's air out, not blowing in. This is the exact opposite of what almost everyone does. Most people grab the fan and point it at their face to stir the hot air around over their body. That cools your skin for a couple of seconds through the sweat it evaporates. But it changes nothing about the temperature of the room. The Japanese use the fan as an extraction pump, to empty the heat out of the entire room, pushing it outside and letting the cool airflow in the other window to take its place. That's the difference between cooling your skin for an instant and actually dropping the temperature of your room for the rest of the night. And there's one last detail, small but surprisingly powerful, because it's built directly on how your own body is put together. You have certain spots where your blood vessels run very close to the surface of the skin. The wrists, the sides of the neck, the ankles, the inside of the elbows, and the back of the knees. If you cool those specific points, you're cooling the blood flowing through them directly. And that blood, now cooler, keeps traveling through your whole body, spreading that sense of coolness. That's why it works so well to run cold tap water over your wrists right before getting into bed, or to place a gel ice pack, the kind from the freezer, wrapped in a thin cloth, over your neck or under the back of your head. You don't need to cool the 90 degrees of air in the entire room, which is impossible without a machine. You just need to trick your body's temperature sensors right where they're most exposed, and your own brain, getting that signal of coolness, takes care of the rest. Now let me be completely honest with you, because I'm not going to sell you smoke. None of this is going to turn a 90-degree room into a 70-degree one. That's not what these methods do. And anyone who promises you that without a machine involved is lying to your face. What they do, and do very well, is break the cycle that actually wakes you up every night. The heat trapped in your bed, the sweat stuck to your skin with nowhere to evaporate, and the stagnant air that never moves. Fix those 3 things at once, and your body simply stops fighting all night to regulate itself. You stop waking up drenched at 3 in the morning. You fall asleep faster, and, more importantly, you stay asleep through the night. And the next morning, you feel the difference in how you get up, not in what the thermometer on the wall says, but in how well you actually rested. So here's exactly what I'd do tonight, spending almost nothing. Start with what's completely free. Cross ventilation with 2 opposite windows and the fan pointing outward, and the damp sheet hung in front of the window. Add the Uchimizu, throwing a bit of water down under your window at dusk. Swap your polyester sheets for the cotton or linen ones you've probably already got stashed in a drawer. And if you live somewhere where summer heat gives no mercy, that's where it's genuinely worth investing a little in a bamboo mat and a breathable pillow. Pick one single method, use it every night for a week until it becomes automatic, and only then add the next one. By the time summer's over, you'll be sleeping in a way you'd forgotten was even possible, and you won't have turned on the air conditioning even once, or watched your electricity bill climb a single cent. If this video opened your eyes, subscribe and share it with that person you've been hearing complain all summer that they can't sleep in the heat. Next week, we're covering the Japanese method for keeping your whole house cool during the day, from morning to night, without spending a single dollar on air conditioning. See you in the next one. Take care.